This week we're going to be really diving into spatial analysis, and you'll start to see these flowcharts used in the website. Flowcharts are a great way to show the steps that you have to do analysis, not necessarily the details. Protocols work well for the details or step-by-step instructions, but here you can see I've got a flowchart going through the overall process of doing a GIS project. First, defining the questions to be answered. That's really important, especially before you start something like field work, where you're going to spend a lot of time in the field or going out and acquiring data. You want to really define what are the questions to be answered so we know what data we need to answer those questions. A really good thing to do is talk to your clients about that. I've seen a lot of projects proceed without talking to the clients up front, and then they find out, oops, we aren't actually answering the question the clients want us to answer. That's a problem. And then you have to go back and start over. Then acquiring data. We've talked a fair bit about this, making sure you've got data that will meet the needs of the answering the questions. Quality assurance, again, checking the data at every step, making sure it's high quality, well documented, it's going to work for what you need. I'll focus on the spatial reference a little bit throughout the class because that's 50% of the problems that we see can go wrong with data in academia and academic research, is the spatial references being either undefined or incorrect. Now, outside of academia, I haven't seen that as much because each organization tends to pick one spatial reference and then they stick with it. So they have less problems, which I completely agree with that approach. I think it's a great idea. Then we do analysis. This tends to be the most interesting part, the highest variety. Really interesting to see some of the information that can emerge out of data. Yeah, really pretty cool. Again, we've got to make sure we're answering the questions that we need to. Flowcharts, again, really can come into analysis, not only to help give a visualization for yourself, but also for reports. When you're done or when you're presenting the final results, you can just put up a flowchart to explain the steps you went through for folks. Then creating products. That's really our job as GIS professionals. We create final products, maps, reports, articles, websites, and others. And then we distribute the data, often on the web again, or emailing it to folks. Now, notice I also say end here because this is a formal flowchart, but in reality, this is a circular process. We just keep doing this over and over again, often reusing data sets. And again, I recommend building up your own warehouse of data that can grow over time. Here, I've got a little flowchart that is actually from a project that a student did for the Klamath River Basin, and they identified all the different parcels that were around the Klamath River, which was a huge project because it's a huge river and has a lot of different folks that own property along the river, ranchers, different tribes, state property, federal property, really cool project. So I'm going to now go into preparing the data for this. And there's a couple videos here. These are for ArcMap, but I'll be working in ArcGIS Pro from now on, which I have up here. Now you'll see that I've got my folder set up with originals and working, and in originals I've got a couple of data sets. I'm going to just do this for Humboldt County because that's going to make it easier. And I've got the parcel ownership layer here, also called the cadastral layer. But you may notice it's called APN HUM 81. Okay, the APN actually stands for Appraiser Parcel Number. So sometimes things aren't labeled what you might think. You might think it was ownership, but no, it's APN. Okay, and this also includes the land use information for Humboldt County. So if we load it up, take a look at the attribute table, we can see we've got a descriptio that has the information on the type of land use that is there. Okay, it's actually difficult to get who actually owns it, but getting the type of land use is fairly easy to do. And it has some other information. But the thing we really want to check is to find out what is the spatial reference. And of course, I've already checked the metadata, which looks good. And sure enough, this is NAD 27, State Plain, California, Zone 1, which we really don't want to be working in because that's also feet. So we'll need to reproject this layer. Now the only other layer I really need is the stream path, the main stem of the Klamath River. And I downloaded the National Hydrology data. Notice this is a geodatabase. If I go in here to the geodatabase, you're going to see a whole bunch of files, and you just want to get out of there and don't ever change any of those or you'll break the geodatabase. So the only way we can really access this is to go in through ARC catalog, into folders, go ahead and add a folder connection to my desktop, to my 510 folder. Then I can drill down, week 5, originals, NHD, and there's my geodatabase. Now when I open it up, notice instead of having a bunch of files that I don't know what they are, these strange files, I get some things that I can probably figure out what's going on. And of course, I'm fairly familiar with this data set. You'd want to check the website about it. Here's hydrography. And then if we go to flow line and drag that in, you will see that what we get is the flow lines for the rivers. And somehow it always picks really light colors, which would be fine if we had a darker background. So I'm just going to make that darker so we can see the rivers and streams. Great. And now we can go and right click, go to our attribute table, and look to see, we have names. Okay, so let's check the spatial reference. And this is in NAT 83. So we want to work in WGS UTM Zone 10 North, which will also be in meters, rather than NAT 83, which is going to be in degrees. Okay, so we do want to reproject this. However, this is a big data set, and reprojecting the whole thing would be kind of a pain. I could pull out just the streams or rivers, but actually what I'm going to do is I just need the main stem of the Klamath. I don't need all of this data. So I'm just going to go and do what's called select by attribute, and go to map, and then select by attributes. Now remember, this is our attribute table. These are called fields, and these are our attributes. And over here I can do a new selection, new expression. Now these can get pretty complicated, but I recommend doing them one step at a time. We want to pick the GNIS name. That's a global or government name information system, I think. And we can say is equal to. Now, depending upon how much information you have, you might want to say contains the text. We could just put Klamath in there. But as I said, I've already played around with this data set. So I know that Klamath River is in there. I'm going to add that as a clause, and then I'm going to run that. And it failed. Oh, wait, because you only want to have one. There we go. Didn't want to add that second one. It starts with one clause, and so that's all I need for this. You can add another clause and then have another selection. All right, and there's the main stem of the Klamath. Now what I can do is I can right click on this, export those features. I'm going to go ahead and save that again to my desktop. Oop, got to refresh so I can see everything that's there. No, there. Well, that's interesting. Desktop 510 week 6. Okay. Not really sure why that isn't showing up. Huh. Okay, well, I guess I'll just save it here for now, and then I'll move it down. And I'll call that the klamathriver.shape. Oh, because it wants a folder. Well, we'll just give it that folder. Sorry. That threw me off because that didn't happen the last time I did this. Oh, now the folder's empty. I think I need to restart ArcMap. Okay, for now, I'm going to pick that folder and then I'm going to call it klamathriver.shape. And I'm going to run it. Now, by default, whenever you run most of the tools in ArcGIS, it's only going to run it on the selected data. So there we go. We've just created a new shape file that just has the Klamath River in it. And now I'm going to pause and restart ArcGIS Pro to see if I can get my folder. Okay, we appear to be back. I actually had another problem when I first started ArcGIS Pro. It couldn't access GSP 510, so I closed the connect to folder, add folder connection dialog, reopened it, and then it works. So when you see those kind of problems, just keep going. It did appear to work. I'm actually going to remove this, and then I'm going to move it into week 6. And I need to refresh so I can see my working folders. Now this is not projected the way I want it to be, so I'm going to put it in original still. Everything I put into working, I want to be in the same spatial reference. I'm actually going to name this WGS84 UTM Zone 10 North. So I know everything in here is going to be WGS84 UTM Zone 10 North. All right, so now we need to reproject that file. Tools, project. There's project. Okay. And we can go get that feature class. And there we go. Make sure we pick the correct spatial reference. Now notice it did put in a geographic transformation. That should be fine. There are a little bit different transformations depending upon where you are on the Earth, but Esri should pick one that is good for the area that you're in. Okay, oops, forgot to set this. That's going to stick it in a geodatabase somewhere, and I want to make sure that I put that in my working folder in my WGS84. Now I can call it the same thing because it's in a different folder. And off we go. All right, so that seemed to work. Now the other one we want to reproject is our, got to do a lot of refreshing today. Parcel Layer, and need to change the output. And I'm going to call this parcel so it's a little bit easier for me to track what it is. And then we've got our coordinate system is the same thing. Add 27, add 83, WGS84, so that looks okay. And there is some error associated with these transformations when it changes the datum. That's what the geographic transformation does. So that is going to introduce a little bit more error, but for this project we'll be okay. All right, now this is going to take a while, but when that's done, we will have both the layers we need in our working folder as WGS84, and now we're ready to start analysis.